The human mind is a complex and often fragile landscape, a place where private battles are fought long before a single sign becomes visible to the outside world. In our modern society, we are accustomed to witnessing the polished surfaces of celebrity life, the glittering public appearances, and the seemingly flawless existences of those who occupy the global stage. We see the carefully curated images, the bright smiles under the flashing cameras, and the outward signs of ultimate success and privilege. Yet we rarely pause to consider the heavy weight that might be pulling down on the person behind the persona. The grand architecture of public life often acts as a massive screen, hiding deep emotional turbulence and psychological struggles that can affect anyone, regardless of their social standing, wealth, or royal bloodlines. It is a universal truth that suffering does not respect boundaries, titles, or inheritance, and the internal pain that can tear through a human soul is just as sharp in a palace as it is in any ordinary home. For many decades, the topic of mental health was buried beneath layers of societal stigma, dismissed as a personal weakness or hidden away like a shameful secret that could ruin a family's reputation. This was especially true within high society and traditional institutions, where maintaining an appearance of absolute strength, composure, and stoic stability was considered an essential duty. To show a hint of vulnerability was to invite judgment, to admit that the heavy crown of responsibility was too heavy to bear, and so generations of public figures learned to mask their deepest anxieties behind a cold, unyielding mask of perfection. However, the world is undergoing a profound transformation in how we perceive and discuss the invisible wounds of the mind, shifting slowly from a culture of enforced silence to one of open acknowledgement and collective healing. This gradual shift has been accelerated by individuals who are willing to risk their reputation and step out of the shadows of tradition to share their raw, unedited personal truths with a global audience. As you watch this exploration of human vulnerability unfolding today, please take a moment to subscribe to our channel so that you never miss our deep dives into the stories that shape our cultural landscape and redefine our collective understanding of human experience. The fascinating journey we are examining today begins not in the bright lights of a modern television studio, but in the historic, quiet corridors of an ancient institution that has long symbolized the ultimate height of tradition, protocol, and emotional restraint. Within those historic walls, a young boy grew up under the constant, unblinking eye of the global media, experiencing both the extraordinary privileges of his royal birth and the devastating sudden loss of his mother under the most tragic and public circumstances imaginable. For a very long time, the world watched this young prince navigate his path into adulthood, appearing to the public as a rebellious but ultimately charming and resilient figure who served his country with distinction and carried out his royal duties with an easy smile. We saw the public events, the military service, the grand ceremonies, and the official tours, assuming that the passage of time had healed the deep wounds of his childhood, and that the structural stability of the royal household provided a safe harbor from internal storms. Yet, beneath that familiar public image, an invisible storm was quietly gathering strength, fueled by decades of unresolved grief, constant media pressure, and the suffocating demands of a life lived entirely for the public eye. The contrast between the outward performance of royal duty and the inward experience of emotional chaos represents one of the most compelling conflicts of our time, illustrating how a person can possess everything the world desires while simultaneously feeling trapped in a cycle of deep despair. It raises fundamental questions about the true cost of public service, the heavy burden of institutional expectations, and what happens when an individual decides that their own mental survival must finally take priority over centuries of traditional protocol. This story is not merely about a single individual or a specific family dispute, but rather a reflection of a wider cultural awakening, where the importance of emotional well-being is being elevated above the old rules of silence and endurance. As we prepare to delve deeper into the specific events, the groundbreaking interviews, and the collaborative projects that would eventually shock the public and challenge the foundations of a historic institution, we must first appreciate the quiet tension that built up over many years. The stage was set for a dramatic departure from the past, a breaking of the traditional mold that would send shockwaves through society and spark an intense global conversation about what it truly means to heal, to speak one's truth, and to reclaim control over one's own destiny in the face of overwhelming pressure. The quiet tension that had built up over decades of hidden suffering finally fractured, leading to a series of historic public declarations that would fundamentally alter the global conversation surrounding the intersection of privilege and mental well-being. The world watched in absolute fascination as Prince Harry and his wife Meghan Markle took the unprecedented step of stepping away from their roles as senior members of the royal family. A decision that sent shockwaves through the global media landscape and challenged centuries of established institutional tradition. This dramatic departure was not a sudden impulse, but rather the culmination of a deeply painful domestic struggle that was laid bare in a monumental tell-all television interview with Oprah Winfrey that captivated tens of millions of viewers across the globe. During this historic broadcast, the couple pulled back the heavy curtain of royal life to reveal a harsh reality marked by intense emotional isolation, systemic neglect, and a crushing lack of support from the very institution designed to protect them. The shocking revelations regarding the depth of their psychological distress, including Meghan's brave admission of severe mental health crises during her pregnancy, provided a chilling look at the severe human cost of maintaining a flawless public image under an unyielding media spotlight. This profound vulnerability set the stage for a much larger and more structured creative endeavor, as Prince Harry channeled his raw personal experiences into a groundbreaking documentary series co-created with Oprah Winfrey, titled The Me You Can't See, which was launched on Apple TV Plus to explore the global crisis of mental health. This multi-part documentary serves as an expansive platform where the intimate struggles of ordinary citizens are seamlessly woven together with the deeply personal testimonies of some of the most famous icons in modern culture, demonstrating that psychological pain is a universal human equalizer. Among the prominent figures who stepped forward to share their deepest vulnerabilities within this series were pop icon Lady Gaga, veteran actress Glenn Close, and professional basketball star DeMar DeRozan, each offering an unvarnished look at their own battles with trauma, severe depression, and debilitating anxiety. However, the emotional heart of the series rests firmly on the extraordinarily candid conversations featuring the Duke of Sussex himself, who chose to detail his own descent into darkness with a level of honesty never before seen from a member of the British royal family. Prince Harry opened up extensively about the profound, unresolved trauma resulting from the tragic and untimely death of his mother, Princess Diana, an event that shattered his childhood world and left him entirely unequipped to handle the immense, invasive public scrutiny that followed. He confessed that for a substantial period of his young adult life, specifically during his late 20s and early 30s, he routinely turned to alcohol and heavy substances as a desperate means to self-medicate and numb the overwhelming emotional agony that threatened to consume him daily. The prince described the agonizing reality of suffering from severe, unpredictable panic attacks while being forced to maintain a calm, smiling facade during high-profile public appearances where hundreds of cameras were trained on his every movement. He vividly recalled the physical manifestation of his intense anxiety, describing how before he even managed to leave the safety of his residence, he would find himself completely drenched in sweat, his heart racing at an alarming rate, and his entire nervous system locked into a primitive, exhausting state of fight or flight. This terrifying internal state made him feel as though his body temperature was consistently 2 or 3 degrees warmer than anyone else in the room, turning every official engagement and public ceremony into a psychological minefield that required an immense, exhausting amount of energy to survive. The constant pressure to perform his royal duties while experiencing this profound inner chaos created an unsustainable existence, driving him closer to a total emotional collapse that remained invisible to the millions of people watching him from afar. The turning point in this harrowing journey came not from royal advisors or traditional medical intervention, but through a deeply transformative personal relationship that forced him to confront the buried ghosts of his past once and for all. Prince Harry specifically credited his meeting and subsequent relationship with Meghan Markle as the ultimate catalyst that finally prompted him to seek professional therapeutic help, recognizing that his path of self-destruction was no longer viable if he wished to build a future with the woman he loved. He reflected on that critical moment of clarity, acknowledging with profound honesty that he knew with absolute certainty that if he did not commit to the difficult process of therapy and fix the broken aspects of his inner self, he was inevitably going to lose this extraordinary woman, whom he could clearly see spending the rest of his natural life with. This crucial realization marked the beginning of a painful but necessary psychological awakening, a willingness to dismantle the protective armor he had worn for decades in order to rawly examine the core wounds of his childhood and the collective trauma of his public existence. By exposing these dark and deeply uncomfortable corners of his personal history, Prince Harry deliberately shattered the long-standing societal expectation that men of his background should suffer in stoic silence, transforming his private torment into a powerful case study for the vital necessity of mental health intervention. The narrative of his struggle reveals how easily the human psyche can become trapped in cycles of trauma when denied the space to grieve openly, and how the absence of a supportive environment can amplify the symptoms of anxiety and depression to a dangerous degree. As the documentary series systematically unpacks these complex emotional dynamics, it builds a palpable sense of tension around the stark choices that individuals must make when confronted with the reality of their own psychological unraveling. The viewer is brought face to face with the immense friction that exists between institutional loyalty and personal survival, a theme that resonates deeply in an era where people everywhere are re-evaluating their relationships with toxic environments, demanding workloads, and oppressive societal expectations. The story of the prince's struggle becomes a mirror for the collective anxieties of a modern world that is increasingly waking up to the critical importance of psychological wellness, forcing a global audience to reconsider what true strength looks like when the cameras are turned off and the public applause finally fades away. The profound journey through the darkest corridors of the human mind ultimately leads to a place of renewal, stability, and a completely redefined sense of personal purpose. Prince Harry openly declares that he has found himself in a significantly better, healthier place since making the courageous decision to seek professional help and stepping away from the rigid structures of the royal family to focus entirely on building a peaceful life with his wife, Meghan, and their children. This radical transformation underscores the immense power of active emotional recovery, illustrating how a person can successfully break free from a lifetime of systemic trauma when they possess the tools, the support system, and the unwavering determination to heal. The prince reflects on his current state of mind with an palpable sense of relief, sharing that he is now vastly more comfortable in his own skin. A stark and beautiful contrast to the decades he spent feeling trapped inside a public persona that was actively destroying his internal peace. The terrifying, debilitating panic attacks that once governed his daily existence and turned every public appearance into a nightmare have completely ceased, replaced by a grounded, authentic understanding of his own psychological landscape. He credits this massive growth to the intense, reflective work he has undertaken over the last few years, asserting that he has learned profoundly more about himself, his emotions, and his core values in the last 4 years of active therapy than he did in the entire 32 years of his life prior to that awakening. With deep gratitude and affection, he continuously highlights his wife as the foundational pillar of this recovery, acknowledging that it was her love, her perspective, and her insistence on emotional honesty that ultimately saved him from a path of permanent psychological destruction. This deeply personal revelation carries an immense global significance, as it directly challenges the ancient toxic narrative that viewing mental health struggles as a vulnerability or seeking therapeutic assistance is a definitive sign of personal weakness. Instead, Prince Harry uses his global platform to completely invert this outdated concept, passionately encouraging people across all walks of life to prioritize their psychological well-being and asserting that in today's chaotic, fast-paced world, the decision to actively ask for help is actually one of the greatest signs of human strength and resilience. The broader impact of this message is amplified by the specific contextual background of the individuals involved, most notably Princess Diana, whose tragic legacy heavily informs every aspect of this modern narrative. Princess Diana was herself a revolutionary figure within the royal institution, famously breaking the traditional mold of stoic detachment by openly discussing her own struggles with postpartum depression, eating disorders, and the immense loneliness of her royal position during the 1990s. Her raw honesty shocked the world back then, but it also sowed the earliest seeds of the modern mental health movement, making her son's current crusade a direct, emotional continuation of her unfinished life's work. By examining the biography of Prince Harry alongside the historical experiences of his mother, the profound systemic issues within traditional, high-pressure environments become undeniably clear, showing how history can easily repeat itself if the culture of silence is left unchallenged. The collaborative nature of the documentary series, bringing together global icons like Oprah Winfrey, Lady Gaga, and Glenn Close, further emphasizes that these struggles are completely universal, touching the lives of the most successful people on Earth just as deeply as they affect ordinary individuals. Oprah Winfrey, a pioneering media figure who rose from a childhood of extreme poverty, abuse, and systemic disadvantage to become one of the most influential voices in modern history, has spent her entire career advocating for emotional literacy, making her the perfect partner for this monumental project. Similarly, Lady Gaga's participation brings a crucial perspective on the intersection of rapid, overwhelming global fame, physical chronic pain, and severe psychological trauma, showing how even the most celebrated artists must fight daily battles behind closed doors to maintain their internal equilibrium. Glenn Close, a celebrated veteran of the acting world, contributes a vital generational perspective, highlighting how families can collectively confront hereditary mental health challenges and break the long-standing cycles of shame that have historically torn households apart. The collective voices within this project create a powerful, undeniable mosaic of human vulnerability, proving that no amount of material wealth, societal prestige, or global adulation can insulate a human being from the fundamental need for emotional safety, connection, and psychological support. Ultimately, the story of Prince Harry's public awakening and the launch of this groundbreaking documentary series marks a permanent turning point in our cultural history, shifting the global dialogue from a place of judgment to one of deep empathy and proactive healing. It serves as an enduring reminder that the unseen battles of the mind require the same care, compassion, and medical seriousness as any physical ailment, and that true freedom can only be achieved when we find the courage to speak our truth out loud. As the final chapters of